Claire Stem, Greater Johnstown senior. What I think is the most important thing to reach our generation is to make economics or financial classes mandatory for high school. As at Greater Johnstown High School, we have an economics class. However, it is not mandatory to take. It's an elective. So not necessarily many people take this class that should. You know, I think that is a necessity, sorry. And it is really important to have this class. Also, what our school also does that is very important is we pair up with a community college, and we have dual enrollment classes, which allows students to receive college credits at only a fraction of the cost. Like I along with Kendra and Janae, we're also graduating. I'm graduating with about 30 college credits, I think, that I've only paid less than $1,000 for. And I can enter Duquesne as a sophomore, which cuts off a lot of money, but it helps a lot. And I think that a lot of high schools should have that program because it helps so many students get a better education.
I'm Janae Stacer from Greater Johnstown. I'm a senior, and like Claire said, economics isn't a required course, but I took it this year as an elective, and I think it should be definitely mandatory, like a requirement class for, I think, 11th grade, because if you're a senior and you're trying to make these decisions, it's better to be educated on it a year prior, if that makes sense. So if it was mandatory in 11th grade, I would have learned a lot more than I would have learned this year, asking more questions that I didn't learn yet in the class, because we didn't cover that material yet, but I need to know it now to get like my answers. And also, like Claire said, the dual enrollment is very, very beneficial, saving probably $20,000 to $30,000 in school by having a year of our college education already covered. That's very important.
Kendra Sliss, senior at Greater Johnstown High School. I'm kind of reiterating what Janae and Claire had said about economics being a required course. I took it as a sophomore as an elective, and I think one of the most important things, though, in the curriculum with economics, I think it's important to do real-world examples, have students look at their own stuff. It's different to read it in a textbook, but then it's a completely different thing to look at your own finances, do assignments that would make kids really look at it like, wow, and take it from that perspective. And another thing about dual enrollment, as Janae and Claire had also mentioned, that we operate at our school, and I'll be able to enter as a sophomore in college. And I think it's a good way to put responsibility on kids at an early age and make them take that initiative at an early age so that they can learn from that later in life.
I'm Natalie Bonarotti from Fox Chapel. I'm also a senior. I think that many people would be surprised to know how many students are actually concerned about financial planning. You know, we go to school, we go to math class, we go to science class, and you think to yourself, when am I ever going to learn, when am I ever going to use this? Why am I learning how to find the derivative of this, you know? But we're all sitting there at the same time trying to figure out what we're going to do with the rest of our lives. And everybody who's applying to college, everyone who's trying to get a job, they're all thinking about one thing, and that's money. So I think you'd be surprised at how many students are actually worried about this. So it could be as simple as incorporating a book like this into the curriculum of another course. We do offer a course at our high school. It used to be called Business Essentials. I'm not sure what the name of it is. I think they changed the name of it. Career Essentials now is the name. But you fill out the Common App, you go through things like that, do a college research, you know, try to figure out where you want to apply to college, and the majority of our school takes it. It's not a required course, but mostly everybody that you talk to does take the course. So these are things that students are worried about, and even if it is just as part of an elective, I think students will take it. I think making something a graduation requirement can be difficult, you know, people that you have to go through to make that happen, but simply incorporating it into the curriculum of another course, I think could also be very helpful to a lot of students like myself.
I'm Chris Mazza, senior at Fox Chapel, and I think I'm just going to go off of kind of what Natalie said, basically about how we already have a class where it's basically about your career essentials, so you set up your resume and everything, you look at colleges, and that really helped me work on scholarships and essays for colleges that I probably wouldn't have done as well on my free time, because since it's my free time, I'd probably just spend it doing something else. but since it was in school, I actually did something productive with it. And I mean, it's not something that you need to take, but a lot of kids choose to take it. And I think just like a class that was based around the book or anything really in economics is really going to help, regardless if it's you have to take it or if it's a elective. And the way of teaching it, I mean, the book kind of makes it really simple, and it's a short book, so like I don't like really reading, but it's short, so, and it has like pictures in it and stuff, so I mean it's easy to read, I guess you can say. So like something like that would definitely, I think, help more kids learn and actually be better at handling their futures economically.
David Nist, freshman at Duquesne University. Everyone pretty much stole my answer. I think adding it to a curriculum, a core curriculum, or even as an elective, is definitely what it takes to make this a well-known topic. One of the things for me that the book did that really stuck with me, I like how it used the charts and showed the possibilities. When talking about Roth IRAs, I mean, it showed that if you started investing at age 18, you could come out with $623,437. Who doesn't want $623,000? Use the big numbers. It's going to stick and it's going to show you the possibilities. So I think any student who sees that is definitely going to want to be interested in something like this.
Mike Funderlich from Butler County Community College. So to take this in a different direction, for those of us who have been through college, or at least their freshman year, we have orientation week where a lot of the students feel like we sit through a bunch of seminars and introductory things and don't really get much out of it. Maybe if we threw in an hour or two of just planning in one of these seminars, then the students would have some sort of outlook upon this. Or if we did a seminar with the parents and the students there, then the parents who also may not be thinking along these lines could also get involved and help the students if the students aren't paying as much attention. So.
Thanks. Kyle Litzy, Duquesne University. I think a lot of getting this message out, financial literacy, to people who are younger, growing up about time to the world, or just even college, really does start at home. I'm sure we all know that not everyone has the best home life. You've heard stories where people look to their parents that set the good example to maybe even a more poor example. But like they said earlier, adding that to the curriculum in high school would be really important. But I think when you approach this topic, you kind of have to use some scare tactics, maybe really show how bad things can be, because if you don't do that, people might not really take it seriously, especially when you're younger and you don't really think this applies to me, that's in the future. We kind of have a society of now rather than later. You even look at the recent financial crisis, ballooning public sector debt, people taking out mortgages they can't afford, kind of causes crisis in part at least. So I think it's kind of a paradigm shift that we need to really learn more about the now versus need versus wants, and educate people at a young age, and really use the scare tactics of look what could happen if you make these mistakes early on. I mean, there's also the good side of when you retire you could be a millionaire, but I think that message doesn't necessarily sit as strong with young people as maybe at 35 you could be bankrupted or something of that nature. So that's kind of my take on that question.
This is Stephanie Bracco from Butler County Community College. I think one way to reach students, just like kind of what Mark said, when I was at Slippery Rock University, you had to take first seminar class your first semester. It was probably 1 credit. And yeah, not a lot of students liked it. You did campus tours, you learned how to schedule, how to purchase your books, but one thing we didn't learn was your finances and how to deal with them when you were in school. So I think that's definitely a way to approach this and to get students to really look at their financial needs, especially using, like what you said previously, the scare tactics and using statistics to really show like what can happen and what can't happen if you're smart about it.
John Braunschweidel, University of Pittsburgh. I would have to agree with what most people have been saying. We take a lot of general requirements at Pitt, and I think adding a class for financial planning and personal budgeting would be a lot more applicable than a lot of the classes that I've taken to fulfill those general requirements. And again, seeing the numbers and actually seeing, what the effects of compounding interest can do to actually increase your wealth when you retire cannot be more beneficial, and I think having a class on that would help a lot.
Margo Lombardi, University of Pittsburgh. I think I'm about to echo the sentiments of some of the younger panelists. Financial planning and the principles contained in this book are something that really need to be taught at a high school level, in my opinion. When you graduate high school, you're 18 years old, you're signing promissory notes for student loans, you're eligible to sign up for credit cards, and we all know when you go to the store, you're always asked, would you like to open a credit card? And I don't think students at the age of 18 realize what the implications of that are. So I think it's very important to start at a young level. But Professor Sugitz, we've had this discussion in our class before. A lot of high schools don't require any type of financial planning courses or just a general economics course. So I think a class that incorporated the lessons learned in this book and was mandatory for high school students would be very beneficial.
So before I give my piece of advice, I'd like to premise by saying I think the takeaway from this question has been that as students, it's not that we don't want to know about financial literacy, we don't know where to go. And I think this book has been a great start because when I was in high school, I thought I was invincible. I'm sure that goes for all of us. Student loan debt isn't real to us. Credit cards, the ramifications of that, they're not real to us. We just think that our parents will take care of it. And I think that this is where I go into my piece of advice, is that as parents, the principles need to be instilled at a young age. And I think what John's father did was a really cool example to make saving fun. There has to be some sort of incentive to save, because that's why you save, for later benefit, postponed consumption, for a later period. So I think it has to be instilled at a young age. And of course the coursework adjustment, that would be a great idea. I know I've taken classes here where I now know everything about hurricanes, but I'm a finance major. And I think a class solely dedicated to financial literacy would definitely go a long way.